Kizamde, hop on the beat!
On the same day as the end of JoJo's 8th part, JoJoLion, in August of 2021, the announcement was made that after a break, the 9th part of JoJo would begin with the tentative title of JoJoLands. Now over a year since that day, we have finally received the date when Part 9 will arrive. The news was revealed in this month's issue of Ultra Jump as well as the newest issue of the JoJo magazine. It says that the 9th part, titled The JoJoLands, would begin serialization on February 17th of 2023. Alongside this announcement, we've also received a teaser image showing a rough sketch of a boat on the ocean. So far, we know hardly anything about what JoJoLands will be. However, we have gotten little bits and pieces of information over the years that could give us some idea. In this video, I'll be going over everything there is to know about JoJoLands before it finally arrives in February. Part 9 has actually been in the works for much longer than you may think. In an interview from 2004 during Steel Ball Run's early publication, Araki said that he had planned the basic outlines of parts up to Part 9. So we can expect the story of Part 9 to build on 7 and 8 in some way. 8's connections to 7 were mostly subtle. Outside of the family tree and the Johnny flashback, not much else linked up. But the way that flashback turned out to be relevant to the supernatural forces behind Part 8 were the most significant thing to me. I imagine that Part 9 will be a kind of synthesis between these two. It'll continue building on the forces established in those arcs, but may also be more direct in following up certain aspects of the previous stories. The setting of Part 9 has been a big topic of discussion over the years. The first mention of it comes from 2007, where Araki mentions Morio. He says that he plans on visiting Morio again in the future in parts 8 and 9. Now whether this was just Araki being vague about which part would include it, or if Part 9 will feature Morio as well, is unknown. Personally, I do think Morio will have some role to play in the story. Part 8 leaves some questions at the end open for the future, so picking up on those may serve as one of the secondary parts of the plot, much like Johnny's legend was in Part 8. The next big hint of Part 9's setting comes from 2016. Where Araki commented that he wanted to depict a story in Northern Europe, perhaps in the Scottish Highlands. That should maybe set off something in your brain by comparing the Highlands to the title of JoJoLands. However, Araki wasn't specific here, so whether this actually refers to JoJo or to his desire to write an entirely different story in that setting is unknown. The last and perhaps biggest clue to the setting, I think, is in the title itself. The JoJoLands is plural, so I would think that it takes place across a variety of locations, similar to Part 3. This may also tie into Part 8. In the final chapter, with Holly still in a coma, Josuke mentions that the Rokakaka fruit may still exist in lands to the south. This is referring to the area surrounding Papua New Guinea, the country where the fruit is thought to originate. I suspect that JoJoLands will explore this area, and the lands mentioned are the various islands throughout the region. The preview image depicting the boat in what appears to be an island volcano may be hinting at this. The last big question when it comes to Part 9 is the protagonist. This is a debate people have been having for over a decade. Some believe that the protagonist will be the series' second female one and will take inspiration from Jolene. Others believe that we could have the more novel idea of twin protagonists. Others still even believed that Fumi, the new universe's Joseph Joestar that appeared at the end of Part 8, was the new protagonist. While that last one may sound out of place, it does actually have a grain of truth. In a recent interview, Araki mentioned that the protagonist of Part 9 would be a descendant of Joseph Joestar, and he says that the final arc of Part 8 was included to hint at that. Now thankfully, Part 8 gave us a family tree that could help us out here. Many times in the past I've mentioned the large amount of siblings farther up the family tree. This could mean that there's potentially dozens of other Joestars out there. However, saying that the new protagonist will be a descendant of Joseph narrows things down quite a bit. Much like the previous universe, this Joseph only had one child, Holly. Here she marries into the Kira family and has two children, Yoshikage Kira and Kei. Both of these characters are technically dead. I say technically because while Kira himself no longer exists, he is half of the two people that merged to become Josuke. So if Josuke were to have a child in the future, could this fit the qualifications for a descendant of Joseph? Maybe they would. But I think the more likely scenario is that we'll be seeing an illegitimate child of Joseph, much like Josuke in Part 4. There's been hints of this already. In the final chapters of Part 8, we see that Joseph has a girlfriend in Japan. Later, he traveled to America and met Suzy Q. But perhaps he unknowingly left behind a child that would eventually lead to a future descendant. But it is still possible that we could just be meeting an entirely new illegitimate child that has no connection to what we've seen before. The actual answer is of course a mystery, but it's still interesting to sift through the facts like this so we can see how close we're able to get. That's all the JoJoLands news we've gotten recently. As a person who began reading JoJo during Part 8's publication, I consider it an honor that I got to experience its final arcs and ending as it first released. Now we're getting the next best thing, the opportunity to watch a JoJo part begin. I hope everyone else is just as excited at that opportunity as I am, and I'm hoping you'll join me in February for the beginning of a new story. Now for the Patreon question of the video. Seth asks, with Japan making good stage adaptations like Fist of the North Star, Bleach, My Hero Academia, Naruto, and Demon Slayer, do you think Japan might make a JoJo stage adaptation, and if so, how will it differ from the source? I would definitely be interested in seeing a stage show for JoJo. Honestly, you'd be hard-pressed to find a Japanese media property out there that hasn't had one of these things, so I do think it's surprising that a series as big as JoJo has never had one. I do feel like if we were going to get one, however, we would have gotten it already since the most popular parts have already been adapted. As for how it would differ from the source material, that may or may not be that big of a question. From what I've seen, a lot of these stage shows can use completely original stories, and full JoJo stories may be a bit too lengthy to fit into a play. Just as an example though, I've gotten into Hunter x Hunter recently, and I've developed a great fondness for its musical stage shows. So I do hope that if there is one for JoJo, that it's a musical. Having character songs was one of my favorite things about the old JoJo the Anthology songs releases, and one of them became the intro to all of my videos. So having more of those would be a blessing. What some people might know is that while JoJo has never gotten a play, another Araki work has. In 2015, there was a stage play adaptation of Under Execution Under Jailbreak. The plot combined that story with another Araki one-shot, Dolce and His Master. The main character was played by Mirai Moriyama, who later went on to play Jugo Shishi in the thus Bokushibe Rohan TV drama. But anyway, I would absolutely love to see a JoJo stage play, and if one were to ever happen, I would aim to cover it on my channel. Thank you for watching. This is the part of the video where I thank my $5 and up patrons. Thank you to Alex Ramirez, Doorbell, Ashton Joseph Miller, Crayon, Rigovids, Zukato, Sentai, Pumpkin Doge, Marrow, Almighty Quarth, Oof, Cowrie, Halil, Gatlin Grove, Lime Jinjo, 17-Hit Combo, Phantom Kai, Sponge Cake, Cakext, Feliciano Rabaja, Rayana Meme, and Christian McDonough.